Welcome, everyone, to the Success Elevated podcast. As always, I'm your host, Hayden Lee, and I am joined today by a very special guest, Gabriel. We're going to go full name here.
Hold on.
Gabriel VanDusseldorp.
Perfect.
Who is the corporate accounts manager for Aramsco.
Yes.
Gabe, thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
Well, I'm super excited to be here. This is exciting.
We were joking before we started recording that you have a very, cool name.
Well, I mean, now...
You must come from a cool family.
Super exciting family.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Now, we can say it's a cool name. When you're, 5...
That's true.
And everyone's calling you VanDusseldorp.
Yeah,
not as cool.
That's tough.
But you get thick skin.
Yeah,
it's all good.
I'm
a good speller. There's a lot of consonants in that name.
That's amazing. You probably, you're very good at what's the country of origin? You know that stuff really well. Yeah,
I do.
Well, I wanted to have you on for a lot of different reasons. You've been a part of the industry for a long time. Katie, our managing partner here at Spot On Solutions, knows you really well, and was like, you got to have Gabe onto the podcast. So she was very complimentary, and I'm excited to have you on and chat a little bit. First and foremost, I would love to kind of talk a little bit about your career background. So let's talk about how you got to where you are today. Okay. What are maybe some steps along the way, career-wise, that you've had that you want to talk about? And how you maybe got into the restoration world,
Yeah, well, great question.
Yeah.
It can be a long story. We're not going to make it a long story.
Okay.
But it could be a long story if I give all the details.
Yeah.
I, like a lot of people in our industry, fell into this. It's completely accidental.
Yeah.
The short version of it is I'm a farm kid from South Dakota.
Cool.
Born and raised. And moved to Arizona, got married and kind of honeymooned our way to Arizona.
Yeah.
Needed a job. I had a sales spirit about me and didn't know any better.
Yeah.
So I actually got into the bicycle business.
Cool.
Super fun.
Can you sell me a Schwinn? Could you?
I wouldn't sell you a Schwinn, but I could sell you some other stuff.
Yeah, I bet you could.
Yeah. So that's that was a great industry to be part of.
Nice.
Still a mountain biker. It's a very
cool.
big part of my life. Big hobby, I should say.
Yeah.
But unless you're going to be in the ownership group, there's just really not a ton of money.
Yeah.
So I took a job that someone was hiring, and it was in the home building industry.
Cool.
I was working in the office. We quickly realized that the office was not a good place for me. I'm a mover and a shaker. And so quickly that opportunity dried up, but they didn't want to get rid of me.
Yeah, they were nice about it.
They were very nice about it. A funny story is this girl fired me. Now, they gave me an opportunity out in the field. This is in Arizona in June.
Yeah. Quite
the opportunity, right? 120 degrees. But anyway, funny story about that is the girl who fired me was also, she was who I carpooled with.
Oh,
so that's a nice awkward conversation.
That's awkward, yeah.
Anyway, lovely lady. She's just doing what she needed to do, and ended up being the absolute best thing because I learned how to build a house. I learned how to talk to customers about their house being built, and that kind of began my construction career, which would have been in, I guess, 04.
Okay.
And did that for a while, 04, 05, 06, with some pretty good years in the home building industry.
Yeah.
Especially
awesome
in Arizona.
Years. Yeah.
Yep. I suppose it was probably 08. The market finally shifted, 07, 08, and the market finally shifted, and I was laid off.
Yeah.
So kind of cried in my, cereal milk for a while, and, took a couple months to figure out what I wanted to do. And I got a phone call from one of my buddies that was still working at the home building company, and he said, hey, we had a house catch on fire, and house next door needs some help. Can you do it? And I was like, well, I built the house. He's like, well, do you know restoration? I was like, yeah, I can figure it out.
Yeah.
Literally, it was my first job. Had no idea what I was doing, but I knew how to build a house, and I knew that smell shouldn't be in the attic, right, with smoke. And so did the best we could, build it through insurance, did everything. We were putting a last coat of paint because we ended up having to restucco the whole entire house. And my phone rang. It was the same guy. He's like, hey, we had a house that the water ran all weekend. We had no idea. If you get here, I bet you can get this job. That was my second job. Had no idea what I was doing. None. It's kind of embarrassing to admit that, but I think that's how a lot of us got into the industry. So my then buddy of mine, we started our own company, and so we ran that company in Arizona for a few years.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was. It's just a great way to learn how to do things the right and wrong way.
Yeah.
Yeah. He
trial by fire a little bit.
Trial, baptism, trial, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
There's fire involved.
Yeah.
He had a real strong construction background. I had a real strong people, relationship, sales background. So it really worked out until it didn't, you know. And then I just had a really great opportunity to go work for another restoration company in Arizona, and wasn't there very long. And Interlink,
Gotcha.
which is now owned by Aramsco, came a knocking. And so I became their restoration specialist in Phoenix, selling drying equipment in the desert.
Yeah.
That just doesn't get better than that, right? So, yeah.
Maybe not as much water damage as you would think.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting being in water damage and being a home builder. Like, I know all those plumbers, right?
Yeah,
so,
you do.
It was an interesting industry to be in because that segment of the industry in Phoenix was a very fast growing.
That's cool.
So I got to be part of that. Had a lot of companies that we worked through, and I just approached sales differently because I was a technician, I was an owner, I was a project manager, like I was all things.
Yeah.
And so I really came across as I really tried to approach my clientele at Interlink as an education support too.
Yeah, that's cool.
So it really made a big difference.
Yeah.
And so I guess I did that from 2010, and then we moved back to South Dakota in 2014. Like I said, I was born and raised there, and I think I'm maybe the only like Phoenician to ever move to South Dakota. Like everyone moves to Phoenix, but yes, and we did that in 2014. We've been back ever since.
That's cool.
And I didn't know what was going to happen, whether I'd be able to stay with Interlink Supply. But Interlink Supply and Aramsco merged in August of 2014, and they knew that was going to happen. I didn't, and they had a position for me.
That's
cool. Which is really cool. It just says a lot.
Yeah, well, and it probably was a little scary, obviously.
It
Something
was.
like that happens, yeah.
It was. I mean, Interlink Supply, it was just made up of some of the best people out there, like just awesome human beings. The Hanks brothers are the ones that owned it, and they sold to Aramsco, and then a guy by the name of Tom Porter was one, a key guy in my career, and they knew that this was happening, and so they said, I'll never forget my contract or my offer letter to move back to South Dakota just said, Gabe's going to be able to move back with his family. Job description is to be determined. And I was like, well, that's kind of a weird thing to put in there, but like, you're writing the check. Okay.
Well, all right, let's do it.
I think we moved in June, and in August the acquisition happened. So.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yep. So then I became the National Restoration Product Specialist. It's a pretty big title.
Yeah.
You got a big name, you got to have a big title, I guess. So. Which was really, really cool because I got to go around and teach the Aramsco sellers, how to sell the Interlink products.
That's cool. That's very cool.
It was a super neat position.
Yeah.
Because I got to meet everyone at Aramsco.
Yeah.
Right? And I didn't know that would be so helpful, but super neat position. And then after about a year of doing that, I guess they figured they kind of got out of me what they needed.
Yeah.
They asked me to take over a regional sales management role. And so I've been doing that. I had been doing that 9 years and 7 months.
Up until just recently.
Yeah, just recently. So not that I'm counting, not that I yeah. So May 1st, I officially became a corporate accounts manager.
Love it.
Yeah. So yeah, it just is it's been a great career, super blessed.
Yeah.
Farm kid from South Dakota. Not that I've made it by any means or anything like that, but it's just a really great career. Just really blessed to be where we are.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
There's so many different directions I think we can take this, and I want to try and squeeze it in without using up all of your time.
Yeah, we don't need a 2-hour podcast.
First off, how did you fit all of that onto a business card? No.
Named
all the titles,
yeah.
all of the, no, I'm just kidding. I think the first thing that I wanted to kind of pick your brain on a little bit was the sales aspect.
Yeah.
Sales has been a huge part of who you have been over the last 20 years.
Yeah.
Maybe not necessarily always on the direct front line selling, but training others how to sell and how to sell the products.
Yeah.
Is that something you've always just kind of gravitated towards, something you're naturally good at?
That's That's a great question.
Yeah.
I don't know how to answer it without like sounding pompous.
Go for it.
Okay, well,
be pompous.
I think God gives everyone gifts, and that's a gifting that I have.
That's cool.
Is to teach people to do what He's gifted me with.
Yeah.
Which is just I'm a sales guy through and through. My dad always said, you should have been an attorney. And I was like, that sounds like a lot of work. He's like, no, you should have been an attorney because you never lie. You just tell the truth in different ways. I was like, pretty sure that is not what I...
Yeah. It
anyway.
doesn't sound like what I do.
I don't do that, but that's what he said I did. But,
that's funny.
But yeah, I mean, sales has just been a huge part of my career.
Yeah.
And I think the big thing for me, in this last position I had as a regional sales manager, I think it's super important to be able to show the ones that you're working with, so my salespeople, my outside salespeople, that you can also do their job. And not that I'm better at it, but I have the Gabe version of it.
Right.
And so I think that that's been really, really beneficial.
Well, leading by example, right? In a lot of ways, you got to be able to. It's hard to lead when you haven't sold. It'd be hard to be a manager, I guess, in a sales role if you hadn't done any kind of selling.
Well, it's tough. Yeah, it's tough. I've seen it tried. Yeah. I've never seen it successfully done. It would be difficult.
Well, I think probably the a big thing about you is you're very easy to talk to. I feel like you build relationships really quickly. Do you feel like that's probably been one of, again, coupled with just the God-given ability that you have to sell, but like, do you feel like that's also been a helpful way that like you just build relationships quickly?
Yeah.
Is that something you've noticed that's been helpful with that?
Yeah, that has just been instrumental in my career. Yeah. It's one thing to go in and make a sale, but it's another thing to answer the phone at 6 a.m. the next day when maybe they just misunderstood the capabilities of that tool or whatever. But yeah, relationships is how I sell. And I will say that's how Aramsco sells as well.
Yeah.
It is a differentiator between us and the competition. We and I can say this because I was one of the ones that was key in this. We really try to hire industry experts that know our industry, but also know how to apply those things in our industry.
Right.
So yeah, for me, relationship management has been. There's nothing higher than that.
Yeah.
Which is why it was a good fit for me to move over here to corporate accounts.
Right.
Because I'm still
it's a big relationship thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm still selling, but I'm selling and walking out, right?
Yeah.
Not just words, but I'm selling and walking out how Aramsco, if you partner with Aramsco, what does that mean for ABC Restoration?
Right.
We're not a telemarketing company. We just aren't. We're the guys that you call when Houston gets a hurricane, 24/7.
For people that maybe are listening to this a little later, there is an active hurricane in Houston right now. That's 100% the case. And to your point, I mean, we were joking about this, but like your team is crazy busy right now because of that, and because they're trying to take care of their customers with the hurricane going on. You're at a trade show by yourself because of that. You know?
I am.
And it's that's I think indicative and speaks to who you guys are, because you're like, hey, at the end of the day, yes, we want new business and we want to grow, but it's more important that we take care of our customers.
Yep.
So that's awesome.
Yep.
The other direction I wanted to go, I think, with this a little bit was you've been in restoration now for a long time.
Yeah.
Why stick with restoration? Why? Obviously, getting into it was kind of it just happened.
Yeah.
But at any point, you could have maybe found another job or maybe gone more into the construction world. But you found this opportunity with restoration and continued with it.
Yeah.
Why stick with restoration? What has made you so passionate about it?
Well, I'm one of those guys that doesn't sit still very well.
Yeah.
So I have all sorts of side gigs. And
yeah.
I could go down all sorts of rabbit holes, and I'm a big coffee guy, and so I could go down that road too. But as far as like a career restoration, it's just a really attractive thing for a guy like myself. Yeah. Meaning, we're both guys. We like to be the hero, right?
Yeah.
With restoration, you have that opportunity to be the hero.
Yeah.
And so when I owned my own restoration company, I remember explaining it to my wife. She's like, man, this is kind of a crappy industry to be in. I was like, yeah, yes and no. I'm the guy that you call when you're having the worst day of your life, right? And what that translates in, if you handle it properly, is you get to be the hero.
100%.
And it's not just in words. Like I remember a sweet little old lady in Sun City West in Phoenix area. Her husband had died about 3 weeks before, and she had a flood. It was not a big deal. Like I'd seen way worse floods that day.
Right.
But I walk in, and I'll just never forget. She's just crying, and I said, "Oh, hi, Mrs. I think it was Mrs. Johnson. My name's Gabe. I'm gonna help you clean this up." And she just literally comes up and just cries, is weeping on my shoulder, and she tells me, "My husband passed away 3 weeks ago. He would have taken care of this." And so, I mean, obviously, we still gave her an invoice, right?
Yeah.
But I had the opportunity to walk her through that and just say, "Hey, Mrs. Johnson, I know this is upsetting, and I know you've got a lot going on. Just let me take care of this for you."
Yeah.
And so it was that moment that I said, you know what, this industry does a lot of good, and I think I'm going to stick with this for a while. And
That's
then
cool.
just been blessed to kind of apply my salesmanship to it.
Yeah.
It's been a really good ride.
Well, and I love that piece because that's something that I think a lot of people share with you. That like as we've interviewed and talked to people on this podcast, and I've met my clients and customers of Spot On Solutions and all of that fun stuff. Like there are a lot of people in this industry that are extremely passionate.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big piece of it, is that they love this opportunity to help people. They genuinely enjoy it. Yes, we enjoy being the hero. There's a dopamine rush. Like all of that is great. But at the end of the day, like I think there's a lot of people here that like truly care about people and helping them. And restoration gives you this opportunity to do it in a way that is different, because it is like you are helping people on their absolute worst day. Like,
whether you like it or not.
Whether you like it or not. And
because some people are really friendly on their worst day.
Right.
There's a lot of people that aren't. Yeah. I can tell you those stories too.
Yeah. There's pros and cons, right? There's definitely the pros where you get those awesome stories like with Mrs. Johnson. And there are others that, you get blamed for trying to be helpful.
Yeah.
Which can be the case too.
Yeah.
But I love that, because again, I think it's something, again, outside looking in, newer to this industry than you or Katie or a lot of other people, but so passionate, and people care about helping people, which is just cool. It's cool to be a part of it in some small way, which is awesome.
The Success Elevated podcast is brought to you by SOS Navigator. SOS Navigator is an on-demand training platform geared towards marketing, personal development, and business growth. We understand that as a business owner in the service industry, you wear a million hats. Let SOS Navigator be a simple and cost-effective way for you to continue to grow your business. Click the link in the show notes below and use code SOS Podcast to get 10% off your next on-demand training course.
So the one thing that you mentioned that I thought was super interesting yesterday when we were talking briefly with Katie was you mentioned your previous role.
Yeah.
Which was great, but had a little bit of craziness to it. Especially with the amount of management that you had to do.
Yeah.
Like team management.
Yeah.
You mentioned something, you had like 30-something direct reports or something like.
And I
maybe
had
even more than that.
Yeah. So when I handed the position off to my, I guess the guy who came in behind me.
Yeah.
I had 17 direct reports.
Okay.
For outside sales.
Yeah.
And those were people that were out actively selling.
Yeah.
And then of course you take all your indirect reports.
That's what it was.
Yes. 20, 30, 40, however many you want to count.
So
at the
many
time.
others.
Just people that you're involved with that you get the privilege of answering questions for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a huge number.
It is.
As a manager, like there are a lot of different things out there and theories, but a lot of places say you can't really effectively manage more than 8 or 10 people at a time as far as direct reports go.
Yeah.
So, obviously that your role has changed. You're not necessarily in that, but it sounds like you were successful in it because you had been doing it for as long as you did.
Yeah.
How did you handle that? What were some tactics or some skills that you had to learn in order to better manage a team that large?
That is a great question.
Yeah.
It is not easy to answer.
No, you're good.
Because I think
it's probably a little controlled chaos.
It absolutely is.
Yeah.
And one of the interesting things is when I came into that position, I was the youngest person on my team.
Oh wow!
Which is just a different dynamic.
Yeah. 100%.
Now I was no longer the youngest person on my team, but when I came into it, I was managing some people that had been with the company for 30 years.
Wow.
So that was a very interesting dynamic. And so, honestly, I was just super blessed. I prayed a lot.
Yeah, yeah.
Because, this is the livelihood of a lot of people.
Yeah.
And so I was attempting to affect that change. But the big thing that I found is, I think with managing people, if you don't get involved with those people, like to do life with those people, you don't really know what their skill set is. And so that was one of the things that I did that seemed to be quite beneficial is I did life with my salespeople. Seeing, babies get born while I was their manager. Unfortunately, we buried parents while I was their manager.
Yeah.
I got the privilege of officiating a wedding of one of my
That's
salespeople.
cool.
Yeah,
That's
so
very cool.
so really just doing life with your sales team, you naturally find out what their skill set is.
Yeah.
And so, the old 80-20 rule that, 80% of your work is going to become, that kind of thing. I think really being able to double down on the skill set that your people have and say, hey, I can manage them lightly in this way.
Yeah.
Maybe they're just natural sellers, but they struggle with time management.
Yeah.
So then I could come in and say, hey, time management's almost as important as your salesmanship or sales skills. Let's work on that. So I think approaching it from a very relational, family-oriented model was really, really helpful for me.
Yeah.
And because I'm a relationship guy, it was just a natural fit.
Yeah, it made sense. Well, and I think in any management scenario, like you have to develop some kind of trust.
Yeah.
And a great way to do that is to talk to people outside of work or talk to them about stuff that's not just work related.
Yeah.
If you're always talking about work and always cracking down on certain things, like you're not going to have as much trust or
It just
the
doesn't
relationship.
work.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work. I mean, so the millennial generation has been really good for lots of reasons, but a big thing in Gen Z as well is the work-life balance.
Right.
So if you are constantly talking about, hey, numbers, like, what have you done for me lately? It's the second what you're behind. That only works for so long.
Yeah.
And it's not a healthy relationship. Yeah. And my number one goal, even though I never sat down and wrote it out, but my number one goal was to have a healthy relationship with my sellers, because you do hard things for people you trust and that you respect.
Yeah.
And so that was why it was super important for me to always be willing and able to go do a sales call.
Yeah.
And you're out on sales calls and you go to someone that you've known for 10, 15, 20 years and then say, hey, well, let's go do a cold call together. Seeing your boss do a cold call, successful or unsuccessful, does a lot for a seller.
Yeah. Big time.
For a salesperson.
One of the best leaders I ever had, and I think this is pretty relatable, but the best leaders, and it was like the first real legit job I ever had growing up, is I moved irrigation pipe on a local farm.
Okay.
And the guy that I moved pipe for was probably in his mid to late 50s when I started moving pipe for him.
Okay.
And hired me and was like, okay, you're going to start moving pipe in this field, and had one of his sons kind of show me how to move the pipe one day. Every single morning I'd be out there moving pipe in one field, and I could look about quarter mile away across the road and see him, that mid 50s, late 50s, moving as much or more pipe than I would be.
Yeah.
Every single morning.
Yep.
And only recently, and that was, I don't know, 14, 15 years ago.
Okay.
Only like this last year has he stopped doing that. It's like he was well into his 60s was he doing this. And that was really impactful for me as a young kid to be like, this leader is not going to ask me to do something that he himself wouldn't go do. And I think that's what has made you a good leader, and I think a lot of people can take value from that. It's like, hey, let's do something together. Let's do a cold call together. Let's go talk to this customer or this client together. Or let me show you how I would do it, and then if you want to take some things from that, that's great. Like you're not telling people to go do something and that you wouldn't yourself do.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is, and especially in our industry, which has become it's different. It's changed so much in the last 10 years. Good, bad, whatever. Private equity has really played a big role in it.
Huge role.
And so, publicly funded or private equity companies, it's about numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah. but you can still have a human aspect to those numbers.
Totally.
And so many times over the last 9 years and 7 months, I would work with the salesperson and say, hey, numbers are down. Let's dive into this together and figure out where it's from. And not every time. Sometimes they just weren't doing their job. Right? Yeah. Let's just call a spade, call it what it is. But a lot of the times there was one big sale that came in that month that no one expected, and it will never happen again. And so now all of a sudden you've got this salesperson that's supposed to comp off of this crazy big sale, and there's a story behind that.
Yeah.
And so I think that's one of the areas, if we're not careful with whomever it is that is in ownership over this, that's looking at numbers,
right?
You take that human aspect out of it. It's problematic. And
like,
so,
well, let's set your quota higher next month because you got that big sale. And it's like, I'm not going to get that every single month.
No, you got to have that humanity needs to be involved.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, that's such good advice, Gabe. Yeah. Seriously. Well, thank you for coming on and chatting here for a few minutes.
Yeah.
I don't want to bug you too long because I know you got a lot going on. You're man in a booth by yourself. But
sure.
I want to leave you with the opportunity here to maybe kind of plug a little bit about what you're doing right now and where people can get in touch with you.
Yeah.
If they're interested in learning more about Aramsco or they want to maybe connect with you and look for maybe some future partnerships.
Yeah.
How can they reach out to you?
Well, Hayden, thank you for that opportunity. This was fun.
Yeah.
My wife always says, "Oh, my husband, he can sell because he talks about himself. It's his favorite subject." So no, we can take that out. But yeah, Aramsco. So like I've been talking about, I've been with them for 15 years, and a couple of things that set us apart. And why you would want to have a corporate account with us or a corporate agreement with us is we have 65 locations nationwide, and we are truly a full service distribution company. We have competitors just like everyone else does, right? But what we do that's different is we sell all the products you need, whether it's restoration, carpet cleaning, janitorial, sanitation, concrete grinding. We're in granite countertop installation.
Wow.
And we are also in traffic safety. We're actually one of the largest traffic safety companies in the United States.
That's amazing.
So why you'd want to partner with us was multiple locations. And one of the big things that set us apart is we do education. We do the sales of stuff, but we also do repairs, and we do the rental. So we really are a one-stop shop. So on my side of that, with the corporate accounts, you've got these big companies that they want to be able to have their multiple locations work with our footprint as well. So it really does work really well for
a great partnership.
Our industry. And we all know that hurricanes tend to happen in the Gulf, in Florida. They happen every once in a while on the West Coast, but they don't really amount to much. But we have such a huge presence all up and down the East Coast and the Gulf. So it really is a good partnership. You can reach out to me at Gabe V. I'm not going to make you spell my whole last name.
Okay, good call.
Gabe V as in Victor, Gabe V at Aramsco.com.
Awesome.
And I can put you in touch with that. I'm one of, I guess, 3 or 4 corporate accounts managers. But obviously Core is a big part of my my book that I manage. And this is my first trade show being at Core.
That's awesome.
My first Core trade show, and it's a fun group.
Oh, yeah.
Really cool people.
It's been a great couple of days, and tomorrow's going to be awesome, too.
Yeah. Looking forward to that as well.
Yeah.
But thank you for this opportunity. It was a lot of fun.
Well, thanks for coming on, Gabe, and I think we got to have you on again in the future.
Okay. Let's do it.
I'd love to have you chat a little bit more, and we can maybe talk more about some of those crazy stories, as I'm sure you have, both as like a restoration owner and now, all of this. I'm sure you could have some awesome sales stories as well. So
there's a few out there. A couple years ago, a guy by the name of Drew that was in our marketing department.
Yeah.
He actually did a whole, I guess it's a bio.
Okay.
We were just talking. He's like, "Do you mind if I start writing this up?" And it's a whole bio on some of the crazy stories I've done. I think that's on Aramsco.com if you go to like the blog section.
I love it.
It's good, downtime reading.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Gabe. I really, really appreciate it. Like I said, we'll have you on again in the future to talk more about this. But thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
This has been Success Elevated, making you a little bit better one show at a time. Thanks for joining us. Please subscribe on YouTube or any other major podcast platform to listen to more episodes. We are proudly brought to you by Spot On Solutions. If you'd like to learn more about how we can help you grow your business, please check us out at spotonsolutions.com.